Political contributor and Republican strategist Denise Gitsham and Democratic strategist Oddity Bustles to kind of break down all these latest developments. Denise, let me start with you. What does all this back and forth signal to you about where a deal truly stands?
Nobody knows except for the people who are in that room. And I think people have reiterated that over and over. And things seem to change by the second. Look, there are so many complicating factors. But one thing I just want to point to is something a guest said that you had on earlier, which is that Iran has never been weaker. The regime specifically, not the Iranian people, but the regime has never been weaker because even the Gulf region has now coalesced against the regime. And people within Iran are saying no. The political factions that are trying to strike a deal are saying, let's strike a deal, while the hardliners are being marginalized. So what your guest said was so true. Yeah. It's that the president has never been in a stronger negotiation position, and I would urge him to finish this job. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but if we don't take advantage of Iran's weakness right now, we may have gone through all of this for nothing.
Yeah, that same guest that you're referring to went on to say that, we should be more aggressive with Iran given their weakness. The concern with that, though, is that that means a prolonged situation in this conflict. And Oddity, let me ask you this. Should we take that approach, or should we be hopeful for a deal? Because on one hand, there's Americans that have been in a lot of financial pain over the last 3 months or so. On the other hand, though, to Denise's point, if we end now, are we in a better place than where we started?
I think first and foremost, those are two really important questions. We need to divorce ourselves from Israel's fight. And I think that President Trump is trying to do that, but he has always been a proponent of that partnership with Israel. So it's difficult because they have already expressed that they don't want to stop the attacks that they are engaged in. In addition to that, I do think that if he wants the midterms to go the way that he wants, he needs to realize that Americans have been hurting. And this is a war that no one, both left and right, wants. And so even if it's a memorandum of understanding and not a true ceasefire, my recommendation would be go ahead and do it. Provide some relief to the American people. Inflation is up. Everything is harder for everyday people. And right now, it's important for us to make sure that we look out for our people first.
Yeah, we've spoken to a lot of experts, some who say similar points and others who point out if we do this memorandum, we only buy Iran time to kind of regain their strength. Again, what you were saying a moment ago there, Denise. Denise, let me ask you this. Senate Democrats are trying to move forward in passing a war powers resolution that would rein in President Trump's movement in Iran. There are already, 4 Republicans who voted to move the resolution forward out of the committee. And it seems that Democrats are a bit confident that they're going to find a fifth of GOP lawmakers to get this passed. Why are some Republicans moving away from supporting the administration's strategy with Iran, potentially at a point where we have the most leverage?
Well, I think all politics is local. In any time you have an election of your own and your people are against the war, you're going to look out for your own interests. And I think that this is what separates leaders, people who are looking at the long game and what's in the best interest of Americans and our not long-term national security, versus those who are just looking to win their next election. I've worked in politics for 27 years now. I've never trusted politicians in Washington who say that they're really for Americans, but who seem to only do this when it comes to principles. I think this is a time for principled leadership, wherever you stand on it, whether you agree with my Democratic friend on the other side, or you agree that the long-term interests of our national security and keeping a nuclear weapon out of the hands of Iran, and this is the best way to do it. I think we need to look to our principles, and we should be following those types of leaders instead of giving in to the pressures that are real, but they're not the things that are actually going to keep us safe.
Oddity, let me get your thoughts on the flip side of that. Do you think the president needs to be reined in and that Democrats have a valid fight here? But also, what's the potential risk of reining him in the middle of this conflict?
Yeah, and I think that's where perhaps my colleague and I would agree. At this point in time, we need to get out of there and be in a position of strength. Now, how we do that, we don't know, but we know that there are different paths. That being said, from the very beginning, a lot of us on the Democratic side did not believe that he had the right to enter or engage in this war without congressional approval. Had the Democrats been more aggressive at that time to change the outcome of the fact that we are in a war, I think I'd be more in favor. I agree that this feels more like a feel-good tactic in the time of an election,
Yeah.
because we're in it now. So what are we going to do to get out of it safely and ensure that Americans are not feeling the impacts of the war?
Yeah, that tactic potentially a little more dangerous now that we're in the middle of this fight. Audrey, let me stick with you for a moment and ask you about another big story we're following. The big fight tonight, President Trump hosting the UFC fight on the White House lawn today. There's been a lot of pushback on that, but the fight is still going on. It's going to mark the nation's 250th anniversary, the president's 80th birthday as well. What message does this send from your perspective to America and Americans around the country?
The fact that this fight is happening while we are at war, and these are the two stories we're talking about today, should make it very clear to the American people that the Trump administration and politicians currently in office could not be further out of touch with everyday Americans. The amount of money that has gone into supporting a private company to come onto the people's house to do this celebration is just disgusting, frankly. And I think that Americans see that. You saw that folks felt very awkward and weird even when he first announced it, his own supporters being like, is he really going to do this? The timing and the perception and everything else that's going on in the world has certainly shaped this. I also, again, have concerns about potential conflicts of interest, as well as just the general perception that if this is your priority, then when are you going to fix all the things that you promised around ensuring that our gas prices aren't out of control, addressing inflation, addressing food insecurity? And so it's just a very out of touch Hunger Games type of moment where all the districts are suffering and the Capitol's thriving.
Denise, is this a let us eat cake moment, or is this, the right thing to prioritize now? I've spoken to a number of UFC fighters throughout the show, some other members of Congress that are for this, saying that, our country has fought for, 250 years to get to where we're at, and this is potentially a symbolism of that.
I mean, well, what are we going to say? We're not going to celebrate anything about America turning 250. The president's not going to celebrate his 80th birthday. And listen, I'm no fan of UFC. I'm not a fan of any sport, to be honest. But those who've been on that you've interviewed are really excited, because if you're a UFC fan, this is like a golden moment for you. And that's a lot of Americans that maybe neither of us or any of the three of us are as tuned into as others. Not to speak for all y'all, but I'm just saying, for me, it's not that exciting. For a lot of people, it is. And I just think, sometimes people are upset with President Trump because they didn't think of this idea first. And also, I would point out, the Democrats never made any notice about anything going on when Hollywood folks came in, Bruce Springsteen came into the White House. All these taxpayer dollar funded things were actually happening in the White House when UFC is picking up the entire bill and subsidizing free tickets to this event for veterans and members of the public. This is something that they're paying $60 million to do, and not a single taxpayer dollar is being spent. If giving away free tickets to something that people really get excited about is something that people can't get behind, I'm not sure how much more for the people you can be than to do that.
Let me just say, this is why I really enjoy being a part of NewsNation. We can have dialogue, people on two different sides, a clear conversation, and let our viewers decide, where they land. Denise Gitsham, Oddity Bustles, really appreciate both of you ladies coming on. Please come back.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. We've got some breaking news. We've got a